Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fully Functional TNG Podcast. As you may have noticed, if you've listened to us before, we're doing things a little bit differently. If this is your first time listening to us, we don't usually start the episodes this way. We usually have a cold open, which is a clip from the show, and then we have a theme song. But for today's episode, there's a very good reason why we're skipping those things. This episode comes with a huge content warning. Warnings for discussions of sexual assault. Basically, anything that surrounds that. It's unavoidable. That's what the episode is about. If that's something that you don't want to hear or something that's going to trigger you or anything like that, we suggest that you just straight up skip this episode and wait for our episode next week. With that all being said, I'll start the episode and introduce ourselves. I'm Maggie, joined by Jeff and Dory. So prior to this, Dory has never seen an episode of Star Trek, and Jeff and I have watched Star Trek almost all our lives. And so we are taking Dory through this journey of Star Trek The Next Generation. And today, we're skipping all the fun stuff because we are discussing the Season 5 episode, Violations.
Which is exactly as bad as it sounds.
Yes. All right, so let's get this awkward train going and go to Dory for the recap, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yay.
I hate this episode.
Good.
It is the worst episode. I cried throughout the entire first half of this episode because I split it up. I couldn't watch it in one go. It was too upsetting. Yeah. Okay. So, while on a mapping survey, the Enterprise is conveying a delegation of Yulians?
Yeah.
Yeah, Yulians.
To Cauldra 4. They are telepathic historians. They research by retrieving long-forgotten memories, but who the fuck cares?
I mean,
we start off...
it's a dumb concept to begin with, because, like, researching history by only looking at things that have happened in the last however many people's lifetime, you're not going to get that much that's new.
Yeah, I don't think it's that weird of a concept, like, because in the future it'll be valuable information, and I think it is kind of cool to, like, have this collection of people's, like, very personal experiences and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that the concept is well thought out given how it's explained. Because what's shown to us essentially just kind of feels like parlor tricks.
Yeah.
Because, like, that kind of stuff you could see from a psychic at a circus, too, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay, so we start off, Keiko is having... She's talking with one of the guys... Tarkin? No, Tarman?
I don't remember.
Tarman. I just saw in my notes.
The old man.
Tarman. Yeah. So I wrote in my notes, she's sitting with an old man with white hair and an old Cindy Lou Who.
Yep.
Huh, I didn't think about that.
This old lady's hairdo is exactly Cindy Lou Who from Grinch.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Okay, so she's trying to remember this chipped cup. It's like off-white with a crack in it. And so it's basically she's trying to remember what it is. Blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. It's a cup where I think it was her grandmother would like... I think she was just using it for like ink to clean it or something. Yeah, and the only thing that in that moment though was like she's imagining this shit, but then she like puts her finger in it, and I'm like, girl, you put your finger in some really dirty water. But
yeah, but it's imaginary water. It's
it doesn't super matter. So then Tarkin's like, okay, so like that's done, whatever.
Whoa, wait.
So then
so she could taste the water. If you die in these visions, do you die in real life?
You
so,
just
like,
go into a coma.
Yeah.
Your mind makes it real.
So, okay, Keika's remembered shit, so they've moved on, and the old dude's like, "Hey, Dr. C, you're do you like you want to be next? I can tell you're thinking about your first kiss," which is like, wow. This guy's a perv.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a showman at like a fucking circus.
Yeah, and then there's other guy who's I will never call him by his name.
Yeah.
We're just gonna refer to him as piece of
I
shit.
actually wrote in my notes, Jev, not Jeff, in capital letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just gonna be known as
Cool.
piece of shit.
Pause.
I kept hearing it as Jeb, and I'm like, Jeb
Jeb?
Bush?
Please clap.
Yeah, Jeb Bush.
No, I will never clap, you piece of shit. Yeah.
So, piece of shit tells his father, who is Tarkin, that he's not supposed to go into other people's memories without permission. So,
Do you know what you thought in that moment that it happened? Like, did you write anything for that or no?
I wrote a few lines down. I was like, well, hold on. I'll tell you. I predicted exactly what was going to happen, but I wrote two things. Yeah. So, okay. So then the old guy, okay. So piece of shit is like, you're not supposed to do that. And, Tarkin's like, you are, they also don't know his name is Tarkin for like partway through the episode. So like I wrote old dude a bunch of times. So like literally for one of when I wrote his line, I just wrote old dash, sorry, colon, and then the line.
That's fair.
So, but his name is Tarkin. He's like, you're right, but sometimes with a beautiful woman, I cannot help myself. And I'm like, we're 3 minutes in and I'm already mad.
Yeah.
So they're also wearing like cream colored Jedi robes with cutouts.
Yes. Really lazy cutouts too. Like they're not even oh geez, what's the word when you like stitch over a cut on a piece of fabric?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well, the ends so that they don't fray and whatnot. But obviously,
Like
it's
hem?
more like a felt fabric.
Like to hem it?
Sorry.
Like hems?
Oh yeah, actually. So yeah, they don't even hem those at all. They just cut it, and it ends up reminding me of like one of those snowflakes that you cut out of paper when you're in like grade 1.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because all the cutouts are triangles,
Yep.
and there's so many of them. It's practically mesh.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. Okay, so then like Data says like, I don't get it. If a memory is so important, why would you need to help remembering it? And Geordi's like, listen, he can't remember his last birthday, but remembers everything about getting a cat like it's yesterday. And Data's like, so you remember the good and forget the bad. And Geordi's like, oh no, we still remember the really bad shit. Don't worry. And then Data is like, oh, so there's like no pattern for human memory. And it's like, yes, that is correct.
yeah.
I mean, I made a note about that moment because Geordi likes cats, and you know what? That makes me happy.
Yeah. And it actually is an interesting conversation about memory.
That's true. I agree.
Unfortunately, it's attached to this episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Tarkin like says that they are archaeologists of the mind. And I'm like, I just wrote in my notes, this old sucks. Because then the next line we learned his name. So then Dr. C tells Picard about like earlier when they were with Keiko and is like, hey, do you want to recall anything? And Picard's like, fucking hard pass.
Yeah. No thanks.
He's like, absolutely not. Yeah. So I wrote, Tarman sucks. Oh, because he's like, oh, people just need to be encouraged. And then, they ask Worf, do you want to do it? And Worf's like, Klingons do not allow themselves to be probed. And so then I wrote, nobody wants this guy in their memories. Fuck right off. And then Tarman then like, he's an asshole, brags how he's more skilled than his son, piece of shit. And then immediately after I wrote, either piece of shit is the bad guy trying to prove himself or Tarman is the biggest piece of shit. So I was right.
Accurate,
I was
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Troy leaves, piece of shit leaves the room and Troy follows him in there in the lift. And she's like, oh yeah, I know all about having an overbearing parent. And she also does mention earlier, she cannot read these guys at all.
Yes.
She gets
Because
nothing
they
from
needed a
them.
good reason for that to not be a plot thing this time.
Yeah. And so I also wrote, I don't like how he's touching his fingers and looking at her. Yeah, I like immediately, I did not like this. I mean, yeah.
They
So
make it
then-
so obvious he's gonna be the bad guy.
really do.
Like from the
Yeah.
start.
There is quite
yeah.
literally like shifty eyes from him, and I'm wondering whether like a couple of early moments. This is why I asked you about his first line when he's talking to his father and telling him, "Hey, don't read people's minds without permission." Whether or not you had a thought on that, because I thought that was
Yeah, I was like, it's too
I
obvious.
thought that was them
like, the
trying to
old
like
man...
misdirect the audience slightly. But the thing is, like, as soon as he gets accused of doing something wrong, it is 100% obvious that he's guilty. And that's not from somebody who knows the episode way. That's the way that the scene is framed. The fact that he's immediately really defensive about it. Okay, I'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tarman's just an old perv, but he's not evil,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Okay, so we cut to Troy's in her room. She's brushing her hair, and then I'm not describing this whole scene. You want to watch it, watch it. I'm not.
She's brushing her
I'm
hair
not
and she
going
gets
into
head
it that
raped.
deeply, but
That's what it is.
she sees like coins falling. She hears Riker's voice. She gets hot chocolate, and then she goes into sort of a memory that was initially with Riker, and piece of shit fucking invades the memory and he assaults her as Riker, but with his face.
Yeah.
And it's very awful. It's incredibly fucking upsetting. And then Troy falls into a coma, and they can't figure out why. She's showing like basically some symptoms of like a certain like syndrome or something, but like it doesn't completely fit. So Dr. C is not like super convinced, but she's like, maybe. So Riker goes to speak to piece of shit, as he was the last piece of shit to be seen with her. And I wrote so many times in this, I hope he dies. I hope Riker punches him in the face. Like, I don't love violence, but I was really in favor of violence against this man in this episode. Unfortunately, we don't get very much, but
Yeah. It was...
we get...
So, just to sort of vaguely describe, it was, he didn't, like, just make her see stuff. He took a sort of sexy romantic memory that she had, and he used that and replaced himself with Riker.
And then turned it into assault.
Yeah.
Yeah. On top of it already being an invasion.
Yeah.
So then Dr. C wants the Yulians to like submit to like an examination to rule out any like, missed organisms that they maybe didn't quite get on the scanner. And this piece of shit, Riker's like talking to him or whatever, and he's just got the face, like that smug fucking face of just like, I wanted Riker to punch him so badly.
Like, I hate this scene so much because, as I mentioned a moment ago, this is not depicted as a scene of a innocent person who is behaving aghast that they would be accused of something like this, and like wanting to help and wanting to come down to what the problem was and whatnot. This is a guilty person clearly trying to misdirect on purpose using what do you call it? A feigned offense in order to get out of it.
Yeah, he's acting suspicious as fuck.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing is, like, it wasn't like, okay, I will give credit to the actor because this was so spot on accurate. Because like we see this so like this is such a thing that people do when just like he was spot on in terms of like the behavior, like his smug face of like pretending to be like, oh my gosh, what happened? Like this is so on the nose of someone knowing they did something and then just like fucking pretend like it, I was so fucking angry. It just makes me think of all these like this. I mean, I've mentioned this before, but this makes me think of the fucking Brock Turner shit of like someone who is like who has this level of influence and they think that nobody can touch them, and you know, I hate this episode. Yeah, I wrote in my notes though, because they go, I wrote that I hope piece of shit gets burned alive.
Yeah,
That's how angry I was with this episode. Is I do not would not wish these things on a lot of things that I hate, but this character, I was like, yeah, hope he gets burned alive somehow. I don't care how they do it, just please do it. And I just was like, I really hope that, you know, in Troy's coma, either she's having really nice dreams, she's only thinking of really nice things, or it's quiet and calming for her, because I was so worried they were gonna like cut to her like having like him still in her head and like her still experiencing even more trauma. I was so scared that's what they were gonna like
that
pop
she was
over to.
that she was gonna be like experiencing it over and over again or something.
Jeez, that would have been way worse.
Yeah, or he was still in her head and
Yeah.
like trying to and like traumatizing her further. And she, but thankfully I don't think that was the case. So yeah, Riker talks to Troy. Oh, he mentioned, because like she talked to him in the clip show, and so he's like, "You did this for me. I'm gonna do it back for you, and hopefully you'll wake up." And I was like, "That's really cute."
Yeah, I was gonna say that the worst episode references
Yeah.
the other worst episode.
Yeah.
Listen, I would take that episode any day
Yeah.
at this point.
that episode's biggest failing is that it's boring as crap.
I would take boring over this. So Riker says, "I miss you. Please don't stay away too long." I was like, I hate everything. Makes me so angry. So Dr. C then sends Riker to bed, and then Riker has a flash, like I guess a memory of engineering. But for a second I was like, did this happen, or did this something that this guy made up? Because I'm not sure.
So okay, there's I'll go into background corner a little bit for that. There is more background in this that I'd like to bring up, but that'll be later. So that particular scene, Jonathan Frakes really disagreed with. He was like, this doesn't seem like if this guy is drudging up people's worst memories and whatnot, this is 100% not the way that Riker would behave in a situation like this, and this isn't something that he would consider one of his worst memories, because A, we have seen him have worse experiences than this in the show, and B, it likely would not be one of his worst fears, because making that choice that he does in there is something that he does with confidence.
Yeah.
And he knows that he has to do it. And like, there's other things that we've seen him fear far more than that. And I think that I don't remember if it was the director or one of the writers came back and said that, well, actually, what the asshole is doing is he's not so much drudging up memories as he's bringing up lingering thoughts and like toying with people because he's sadistic. And it's like, okay,
yeah, but
great,
that's not
so...
clear to the viewer.
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
Because they make it, because they
100%
go on
agree.
and on how it's memories. So for this thing to, because like
That's
I
why I
wasn't
said
sure,
it's
because
background corner.
Yeah, because like this to me didn't make sense for it to be a memory. There's like Riker didn't, like, this is not that crazy. Like, for context for the listeners, Riker is like, he's in engineering, and there's some kind of like leak or exposure. They need to contain it, and someone named Ensign Keller is still in like the engine room, which I think at this point I'd remember what it's called, but I don't.
Engineering.
No, but like the column, the room with like the big column with like the
In the warp
crystal
core.
shit or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, okay. You know what? Then I wouldn't know that term. I don't think that term sounds familiar to me at all.
Oh.
The warp core. Okay. So listen, I remember. Anyways, so they close the door to, like, Riker gives, I guess, the order to like close the door. It's going down, and the Ensign Keller is still in there, and somebody / piece of shit yells at Riker that he killed her, and he obviously didn't, there's an exposure. Anyways, yeah, just this. I was like, I don't understand if this is a memory or something he's made up, because this feels like something that Riker would like not be happy about. But yeah, we've seen other things happen. This would not be his worst memory. But anyway, so then Picard is calling for Riker. There's no answer. So Worf finds him in his room, and he has fallen into a coma as well. So then Dr. C concludes that the Yulians, they're not carrying any harmful organisms, but then I wrote, but one of them is a harmful organism. So Dr. C says that Troi and Riker's brain patterns are different than they previously were. Like I think Troi had a scan not that long ago, and it was like normal, and then this is like a little bit different. And Worf is like, hey, maybe we isolate the aliens, the Yulians, because like everyone was fine till now. And I'm like, listen, Worf doesn't usually get a lot of good points, but I mean, this time I was on board. And so Dr. C says that she has found electropathic residue located on the thalamus, the area of the cerebral cortex that involves memory function. Mm-hmm. So Dr. C and Picard talk to the Yulians, and Dr. C wants to do more exams on them, and she asks Keiko also to do like a neurological workup, because she was already like memory, what did I write? I don't know. She already had memory based. Okay, it's based. I was like, what did I write? I thought I wrote blessed, and I was like, I don't understand what that means in this context.
Sounds like those she's memories already are had
based. She do a memory based workup or whatever.
They already like played with her memory, or like
she's already had been memoried, whatever. So but then they find out Keiko doesn't have the residue. So then Geordi is asking the computer for patterns to figure out like what could have caused the comas, and then we go to Dr. C, and sorry, this was like
I think I know what you're laughing at. Yeah.
Oh yes. So Dr. C, we see her flashback, and it's to when Jack Crusher was killed, and she's being brought in to see his body, and she's being escorted by
Picard with a hairpiece.
Picard with something on his head.
Yeah.
If it's hair, it's debatable. That hair is unfortunate and upsetting.
Yeah.
Listen, if this was a different episode, that hairpiece would have been the most upsetting thing in that episode. But unfortunately, there's way worse shit in this episode. So the spectrum is...
I was going to say the hairpiece is only like the fourth most upsetting.
Yeah, the hairpiece really gets a pass this episode, because there's way worse shit going on. Okay, yeah, so Picard is bringing Dr. C in to see Jack, and they reveal his face. He's got like scars, and then piece of shit's face is like there on the table. And again, I mentioned, I hope this piece of shit dies. It's very upsetting for Dr. C. This is obviously a memory, and very fair upsetting memory for her to be brought up. And okay, so then Geordi and Data come to see her, and she's fallen into a coma as well. So, but Geordi is also, he's trying to, he's not having a lot of luck in like finding any kind of patterns. So Picard asks Data to look into the other 11 planets that they've been to recently and see if anyone else has fallen into a coma. And they're really not sure what to do at this point with the Yulians, because they're just like telepathic. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, where they are, because they don't really have to be in a room with someone. And then thankfully Troi wakes up, and she asks for Picard. And she says it's like waking up from a nightmare and not remembering what it was about. And like, I mean, that is what happened. But yeah, it's... the last thing she remembers is brushing her hair, and then 3 days later she's woken up here. Okay, so then one nice thing in this episode is we do get to meet a character who I had not noticed previously, and his name is Dr. Martin. And he also should be known as Dr. Smoke Show.
Yeah.
Big fan. Dr. Martin has a few lines. Big fan. He's the best. He's truly the only bright spot of this episode. Welcome, Dr. Martin. Welcome to the gang. I'm sorry this was the episode that I have seen you in, met you in. So he's basically doing the doctor stuff because Dr. C is in a coma. So
they needed another character for the doctor to talk to.
Listen,
and Ogawa wasn't available for this one, I guess.
I'm big fan of this. Yes, Dr. Martin.
I have bad news. You do not see him again.
No!
However, he does play a pretty prominent side character in a Voyager episode. So if you would like to watch all the way into Voyager, you know.
No.
Also, he's got alien makeup on in that one. So,
then...
But he's also way more charming because he's like the leader of a planet.
Well, okay. Then I was going to say I'll treasure these moments, but I don't want to ever go near this episode again. So
Yeah.
That's
listen,
fair.
Doctor.
He's older than my dad.
Now or when this was filmed?
In general.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying in this episode he was a smoke show. I don't know what he looks
fine.
like now. I didn't look up the actor's name. I should have, but
His name's amazing. It's Rick Fitz.
that is a
Yeah.
tongue twister of a name, but I hope all is well. And
No, I looked him up because it's so rare that we get like a side character who has as much dialogue as he does. So I was really like, oh, who's this guy? I don't remember him. Do we see him again? And found out no, we don't.
it was then
well.
he gets we'll get a return mention of him in the retrospective.
That's fair.
This will be the only thing from this episode that will ever come back ever again.
Yeah.
The only mention of this episode, or yeah. Thanks, Dr. Martin. It's been
Take care, Mr. Fitz.
It's been a slice. Okay, so he's like scanning. He does the doctor stuff. He's kind of in the background of a lot of shit, but listen, I'll take it. Okay, so then Picard tells the Yulians, like, well, he's like, you're being voluntold to stay in your quarters. So piece of shit says that, they should be allowed to prove their innocence by memory probing Troy. And I'm like, if you fucking touch her, like, I hate this.
At this point, every time that we've seen him, he has been casting more suspicion on himself, including that scene where it's literally a shot of him doing shifty eyes after saying, well, I don't know who could possibly be guilty of this.
Yeah.
It's
And
also,
it's just like, guys.
It's really dumb because Dr. Crusher was going to like do an exam like to see like while they were doing a memory probe or whatever to see if like whatever they were doing was harmful or whatever. But then piece of shit like attacks her with the bad memory. She goes into a coma and then they just forget about that plan.
Yep.
They just
Yeah, I
don't do
guess
it. So like
Yeah, so I hate that he's like, let us prove your innocence by memory probing Troy. And I was like, no, absolutely fucking not. But Cindy Lou Who manages to convince Picard this would be a great idea. Sorry, Cindy Lou didn't really do anything bad, but like, I'm just angry. She's fine. She didn't know that this guy was a garbage person. She just thinks that they have a right to defend themselves. But listen, fuck all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I wrote, Geordi is a genius. Honestly, thank you, Geordi, for everything this episode. So he's like, maybe we should be looking into because initially they were looking at the unexplained comas, and they're like, maybe we should look into the explained comas, as Dr. C thought that it, like, the comas presented a similar to the Arison. syndrome.
Yeah, like
Doesn't matter what it is.
Iricine
Yeah.
or
Syndrome.
something like that.
Yeah,
Irricine.
it was like very
Irricine.
similar
Yeah.
symptoms to this other syndrome, and maybe we should see if anybody else has been diagnosed with that, which
Limousine
means
syndrome.
the doctors are maybe not the best at some of these other places,
Yeah.
or maybe not as thorough as Dr. C. So I just wrote, maybe you guys just need to look at doctors who are bad at their jobs. Not actually, listen, I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but just like, we'll just say doctors who are maybe not as thorough as Dr. C. So then they find 2 of these cases on one of the planets, and the same time that the group was there. And so Troy has agreed to be probed by piece of shit. So they're in a room. She gets her hairbrush. Piece of shit does. I wrote he does the Sean Spencer fingers by his head. And so Troy is remembering the Riker memory. Oh, and I thought it was coins initially. It turns out it was poker chips that were falling. Mm-hmm. So
Oh yeah, poker's a big thing in Star Trek.
Yes. So piece of shit is also, he's bad at this because she's like, oh, he's hurting her in like her memory, and then he's like, you're frightened. Like, yeah, she just said someone's hurting her. Why would she not be frightened? He says it like this is some kind of revelation. I'm like, you're bad at this. Mm-hmm. You're bad at all this stuff. Like, right to jail anyway. Like, for everything. Right to jail forever. So then Troy does realize it's not Riker and someone else has taken his place. And then this piece of shit really was like, hey, I'm going to really try to cover my tracks, but in a very fucked up way also. And he puts his dad's face, he puts Tarkin's face instead of Riker's face. So he is like, yep, my dad's the one who assaulted you. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like that is a enormous, like an absolutely just crazy level of fucked up. And then piece of shit pretends to be shocked that, like, oh my god, my father. Mm-hmm. And he's like, listen, if you want to persecute my dad, it's totally cool. And Picard's like, yeah, but like memory invasion is really not a crime that we've ever really dealt with. So but apparently the Yulians have, because that was like a thing 300 years ago, and so they do have some shit, but they talk about it after. Okay. So he's like, oh yeah, I find it so difficult to believe my dad did this. And I'm like, yeah, because he fucking didn't, you piece of shit. Again, man, yeah. And then he's like, yeah, also, I hear the punishment is severe. Yeah, I can't wait till it's doled out to you, you monster. So then Picard tells Geordi and Data to tell the medical people, that they fucked up. Oh, wait, yeah. Sorry, yeah, because yeah, they're like, okay, so because they like, okay, it's Tarman doing this, so like, tell the doctors on the planets, yep, it's not this syndrome, it's this guy, but like not actually. So Geordi realizes that Tarman actually was on his home planet when these people fell into comas on other planets. So like, this fucking piece of shit. He's like, he says he's talking to Troy, and he's like, I can't forget what my dad did to you. And I like, I don't know if we can be friends with that. And I was like, she's like, oh no, it's like, okay, we can be friends. And he's like, I don't know. What my dad did to you was terrible. I'm like, I just wish he burst into flames right there and then.
Yeah.
So yeah. He's just also being very creepy, like touching her face, and she's like, you okay? You want to, like, something bothering you? You want to talk? Because he's acting very fucking weird at this point. And then he's like, ugh, why do you have to be so nice? And I'm like, yeah, this is because it's her fault. Why did she have to be
he's
such
behaving
a nice,
so
decent
much like
person?
like the stereotype of like some creepy serial killer who just turns out to be like the nerdy guy in the side of class or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, then he tries to fucking assault her again and go into her memory, and then she though realizes what's happening, and she's able she then tries to use the communicator, but he grabs it off her, and she is like realizing what's happening. Sorry, I wrote on the margins. I was not going to waste paper for this this episode.
Yeah.
My notes for the rest of this are very messy, so bear with me. So Troy is able to sort of come through, and she slaps him. Mm-hmm. I was like, yes. And then she starts kicking him, and then she hits him with a book, and I'm like, keep fucking going. And then the door opens, and Worf stands there for like a good beat. Before then, Worf just
it's a
does the
single
wildest
bitch slap.
It's got so much power.
Mm-hmm.
It's so powerful that he falls in the other direction. So cool like it defies gravity. So then
I thought you would
Data...
appreciate Worf like hitting him though.
Oh yes. Oh, listen. Any violence towards this man, I'm a fan. I will take it.
Yeah.
The character. Sorry to this actor. He played this part very well, so
yeah.
Yeah, this is the character. So Data then explains that piece of shit was there for all the comas. Dr. C and Riker wake up, and Tarman then so like piece of shit is like fucking right to jail. So Tarman's like, yeah, it's been 300 years since we've had to treat people for He does actually, honestly, credit that he does admit that it's been 300 years since they've had to treat for this kind of rape. And I was like, honestly, a little surprised they actually said the word rape in the show. But I kind of appreciate that they do, that he admits this is rape.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate that, I guess. So then Picard, like, listen, Picard, this was whatever. Picard's like, listen, Earth was bad once, but it's not really that much anymore. Sure. But violence is inside of all of us. It's just what you do with it. Like, okay, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, Picard, it should have just said, just not have maybe said that.
Yeah, it's a really weird, like, moral to...
This message is so fucking tacked on and worthless. I think the problem is it's a response to the themes of the episode rather than intertwined with the themes of the episode. And, like, the episode doesn't really do anything to create a mystery around it, so it doesn't have that interest to it. But it doesn't have a moral besides, this is bad. Great, yeah, okay. Thank you for the contribution.
Yeah, this episode's not saying anything. It's just, let's assault the woman
okay, now,
on the show.
Background corner time. Women wrote this.
No.
Yes.
What?
Yes. The idea was actually spearheaded by Jerry Taylor. 2 women wrote it. 2 women wrote the teleplay as well. A man directed it. But, I mean, it was already written by that point, and the director really doesn't have that much power when it comes to directing a weekly TV show. So, yeah, that's what fucking happened. This is why I said I have background info that brings up more questions than it answers. Supposedly, it had been a passion project of Jerry Taylor's for a while. Not like a huge passion project, but an idea that she had been kicking around, and she went through multiple drafts of it, each which, like, approached the subject matter from what do you call it, from like a different way, but the way that she ended up honing in on it is, well, we needed a way to make this sci-fi, so let's make it mind rape. Okay, great, thanks. And all the episode really does is show us a series of terrible events with no mystery to tie into them. So I don't know what she was passionate about when telling this story. I really can't.
Trauma? That's what I can think of. Is she passionate
Yeah.
about trauma?
Maybe.
Because I do not get what she was going for.
Maybe.
Because this episode
It
was a
doesn't make any
mess and a
sense to me.
half.
Because it doesn't even because I could understand maybe if you wanted to make some kind of message about sexual assault and how it affects women and stuff like that, you didn't do that.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all. And I mean, it's really sad because this is the same woman who wrote The Drumhead. Clearly she knows how to deliver a message within a show.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't even imagine what, because there's no message in this episode.
There isn't, no. Now, her co-writer, the other person who was involved with it seemed to be kind of a 50-50 authorship that we know of, is somebody who had not written for Star Trek before and wasn't connected to it anymore. She did teleplays for lots of TV shows throughout the 1990s, and there isn't a ton of information about stuff that she's done after that. It's on IMDb, but it's a lot of one-off things.
Well, listen, women can be misogynist too.
That's
they
true.
Can be pieces of shit as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it's just upsetting because it's
It
'Cause
feels
it's
like it's taken almost too lightly. It feels like
Yeah.
it's almost callous because they have Troy, and then they have different trauma of Riker and Dr. C, and it almost feels like as initially I was like, okay, maybe this is just specific to Troy. This guy is a garbage person to Troy, but then it feels like it has nothing to do with Troy personally, because then he went after I mean, I know, yeah, he liked her, but this is a fucking weird way of showing
Yes.
it. Or I don't understand, but then he goes after Riker and then Dr. C, and I get it's because Riker was going for him, and then Dr. C was doing the research, but it kind of to me almost takes away from Troy's case almost.
Yeah. And
it kind of just
it's extra upsetting because it's such a trope to always use sexual violence against women.
You know what's funny? Taylor actually went on record to say that the entire approach behind writing this was to avoid rape tropes.
But that's
this episode
Yes,
is a
it
rape
is.
trope.
It is.
yeah. And it's especially because it's Troy too, and she always gets the brunt of everything
Now,
in the fucking
I
show.
would like to point out that this episode did get some angry mail. However, it is important to remember that the climate of discussion around topics like this in the early 1990s is nothing like it is now. The angry mail had nothing to do with the sexual assault.
Oh, okay. Then what?
The
what are
angry
people
mail
about?
was written. The angry mail was written because fans believed that showing this lingering romance idea between Troy and Riker was a big tease, and they thought that something was coming with that.
Are people stupid? Sorry.
Yes.
That's that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a memory.
Yep.
What they've
She
done
must be
this
thinking
shit-
about it because she's still into him. I think that was their thought process.
Dr. C was thinking about her first kiss.
Yep.
Does that mean she wants to go be with whoever she had her first kiss with? That
Clearly.
logic makes no fucking sense.
No, it doesn't.
What's wrong with people? Holy shit.
Yeah, it's really fucking stupid.
Yep. But as I said, the climate around this topic was nothing like it is now.
Yeah, I know that. That, this wouldn't have been,
It wouldn't have been out of the ordinary to show this.
yeah, it wasn't in, the sort of mainstream social consciousness to be hey, maybe we stop, raping every female character.
Yep.
And it's
It's just wild that this is happens so much on this show.
yeah.
Which, honestly, I mean, I've said this before. Okay. There's a lot of things about this show that surprises me. Number one, how horny it is. But also, the amount of things that, that we've had to do trigger warnings or content warnings for.
Yeah.
And this is especially like assault so many times.
Yeah.
Many times. Like, this is truly this, and the fact that, like, I mean, it obviously shows how, like, I don't want to say nothing, but, like, how light this sort of topic was taken because they've done it this many times.
Yeah.
And they've done it multiple times to this one character.
Yes.
Because here's what's messed up too. Of all the times we've had to do a trigger warning and stuff, this is the only one where the episode itself acknowledges that this was assault.
Yes.
All the other instances were things that at the time were not seen as assault.
Well, I mean,
Like using
the Riker one, the trial one, but they also took that really, really light because we never learned we never got a conclusion.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Sorry
one.
Sorry to bring that episode up, which is
Yeah.
also a fucking terrible episode.
But I meant, like, yeah, you're right. You're right about that one. That's another instance. But I was more talking about, like, when the parasite dude was in Riker's body and him and Dr. Crusher hook up. In the child, they never really acknowledge, like, how assaulty that is. Like,
Yes.
And there's other instances like that where it's like, hey, that was actually really fucked up, but the episode doesn't really treat it that way.
No.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Last night, me and my roommate were watching a YouTube video about, like, villains and stuff, and they actually brought something up that never occurred to me, I guess, when I was watching that show also, and it didn't occur to the creators. So there's the show Once Upon a Time, and there's a character named Regina who's like the evil queen, and at one point she like takes this guy's heart, and like when you have someone's heart you can like tell them to do anything, like they are under your power. And she tells the guards to bring them, like she's holding the guy's heart and she's like tells the guards or tells him to be like, go to my room and I'll like meet you there or whatever. And so the implication is that they have sex, but she's holding his heart when this happens, like when she's like, go to the room or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like very much implied that she assaulted him because he had no
agency,
consent in the matter. And people have mentioned, like, so this was in the YouTube video, people had actually tweeted out to the creators being like, hey, because like Regina gets like a really good redemption arc and she's a really good character, but like this is something that happens in season 1, and it's a pretty glaring, like, what the fuck? But like also when I was watching it, I don't think I even thought much of it. I mean, this is a show that premiered many years ago, but not that long ago at the same time. So like I mean, it's much more explicit of like what shit happens on, in TNG-ish, but I get like sometimes I guess they're just not thinking of it in the they're thinking of what's happening in a different, not context, but but it's wrong. You really should. That's the problem.
Cultural context does inform how we approach topics.
Yeah.
As well.
So like, it's also, I mean, in this particular episode, it's women, and they really, I mean, that's upsetting that they didn't. This shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have done this episode. But in the Once Upon a Time, it's 2 male showrunners, and they were like, they very much are like, this was not our intention. We did not, they did not, and like I believe that they did not have the intention of this. They're just, the storytelling of her having control or whatever did not even occur to them that this would be seen as assault. But like, that's kind of the problem, is that they should be like, there needs to be like, and this is not that long ago, but yeah, like, you need, it's not like, okay, you need to think more critical of it. I'm not sure how to exactly like make my point, but I promise this is all related. It's just that like these are things that like they're, yeah, maybe it wasn't, you're not thinking about it being assault at the time doesn't mean it's not assault.
Yeah.
So like with the child, with like some of the other, with Dr. C and Riker, they may not see it that way. Doesn't mean it's not.
Yeah.
So like, and it's wild because like, that's not just a 90s thing. Cause that's still, this happened. I don't remember when, but I think it was still in like the 2010s that Once Upon a Time started. So like people need to do better.
Yeah.
Just because you don't necessarily like, maybe the problem is get a second opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, but I guess they're not going to get a second opinion if they're not thinking that any of this is like problematic in a way. So I don't know. My point is maybe not necessarily like,
yeah, maybe when it comes to like sex stuff, maybe just do a couple passes to make sure it's consensual, you know?
Yeah.
That it is consensual.
Yeah. But yeah, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, I don't understand why this episode exists. Yeah, there's not a lot to say. It's just, it's the assault episode. And it's like, I feel like you could have had this story without resorting to sexual violence. Because, like, so
you literally could have picked any fucking memory of hers. And the wildest thing is like, oh, why did this, okay, here's something. Why did he pick terrible memories for Riker and Dr. C, but this memory for Troy wasn't initially bad. He made it bad. This was a nice moment for her, a nice memory for her, and he made it bad. And so now that's something that's tainted for her. That's like,
I'll tell you something fucked up. That was the point, was to because rape is about control.
Oh no, I know.
The point was to take something nice and use that to his advantage, and now anytime she thinks of that, she's going to remember him instead.
I just hate, like, this is just
the other memories was just to sort of those
fuck with them.
Yeah, that was just like he was covering his tracks, so he just so that wasn't really about like getting his rocks off or anything. The Troy thing was specifically about like a thing he wanted to do. The other things were just out of necessity.
I do completely get like why he did the picked those memories to like fuck with hers, because yeah, I do understand that like it's about control, but I just fucking hate that they did this to her, that they took a nice memory for her that obviously means a lot, and now it just I could just go on and on screaming about how much I hate this episode.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to imply that you didn't know that stuff. It was more like for the audience's benefit that like in case you don't know, like that's the basics, is like rape is about control. It's very the sex part is secondary for that.
Yeah. I fucking hate this episode.
Yeah. We are obviously going to skip favorites. Because that's just messed up.
There is no favorites.
Yeah.
My favorite moment in the episode is the credits, because it's over.
Move on to predictions for the next episode. Which is... Alright, so the episode... next week's episode is called The Masterpiece Society. And in this episode, the Enterprise comes to a colony to warn them about an impending disaster and realizes their colony is structured in a very interesting way.
Okay, just by the title, it sounds very pretentious. So, okay. Like the city is built differently, or like politically, like within their community,
their
roles or something.
Their society is structured in a very interesting way.
Okay, so it's not the buildings.
No.
Can you imagine? Oh, there's like something. There's a meteor coming to like destroy the planet. Oh no, it's cool. Our houses are built different. They're meteor proof.
Build Ford tough.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so if it's like the people, okay, I would guess then, okay, the Masterpiece Society, I would guess maybe that would be the people. Although titles in this show have very much like come out of nowhere, so for all I know, this title could almost be not related. Or it could be metaphorical, but listen, okay, let's go with, okay, we're going in a really, we'll call it a direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's run, okay, I'm going to say the Masterpiece Society is like maybe the governing body, and it's maybe people who like, I do think it's like a fireball related, so like something's obviously coming to like hit the planet to like, for environmental shit to happen, because if it's a crystal monster, no, I'm kidding. It's a crystal entity, I'm gonna lose my mind. No. I'm joking. Okay, so yeah, environmental disaster. So maybe I just like, when I hear masterpiece, I think of like art. So I wonder if like they don't want to leave, they don't want to move because maybe they have like they want to, maybe they have sort of not like a time capsule, I'm just thinking of it, maybe it's like a museum and they have a bunch of shit that they want to like protect, and like they need to like stay to do shit for it to like protect it, the history and art and shit. So like, but like they have to like be there to enact the safety precautions to protect the museum or the building. So like they can't, they've been like assigned to take care of this shit, so like they can't actually, if they're like, oh, so the Enterprise is like, oh, this like fireball's coming, and they're like, it's okay, we're gonna like stay to like save our history and shit, because we gotta act like set the safety precautions and we have to be there for it to like the last minute. So like, or we can't really do it like remotely or set it like that far in advance. So even though I guess logically that doesn't make sense, but listen, I got nothing else right now. My brain is full of rage.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, if you'd like to see if Dory's correct, join us next time on a far less upsetting episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Wait, no, that's not the name of the show.
Of our show, podcast, The Next Generation.
No.
Yeah. Join us next time for a far less upsetting episode of Fully Functional, a TNG podcast.
Goodbye.
All right.